Welcome to Look Up with Pastor Mike and his wife Linda Sasso of Calvary Chapel of Eagle, a radio ministry designed to assist you in applying God's Word to your everyday life. For the next hour, Pastor Mike and Linda will encourage you with your walk with Christ and help you look up to Jesus. If you need advice on marriage, life challenges, or relationships, call in now. It's time to look up to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Here's Mike and Linda.
Well, hi, everybody. This is Pastor Mike. Welcome to Look Up as we continue our look through the 12 spiritual disciplines that will make your faith strong. And I really pray that most of you have been getting something out of this so that you're actually thinking, you know what, that's something that's lacking in my life, or I need to start adding something to my life. Remember, we're not preaching a works-oriented salvation. We're saved by grace through faith, and not of yourselves. It's a gift of God, not of works. Lest any man should boast. That's what the Bible says. We're saved by grace through faith. But now that you're saved, there are things that you could step up and make your life more productive. You really can. So there's the balance there. You don't get saved by disciplines and good works. But you know what? Well, you know, the good things come to those who work for them. You know, it's like there's a lot of things in life that if you just sit around, like if you're a Christian, you're saved, and you need a job, you just sit around at home, play video games, and hope that maybe somebody calls you and gives you a job. No, you got a job search, right? And, you know, the spiritual life is like that too. There's things in life where if you want to move forward, you've got to intentionally make some decisions to cut things out of your life that are a distraction or that are dragging you down, such as sin or things that waste your time. And you intentionally add things to your life that will build you up in the faith, such as Bible reading and fellowship and worship. And, you know, I'm always adjusting and readjusting my life. There's times I think, you know what, I'm doing too much of this and I need to do too much more of that, you know. And recently I've picked up my guitar and I've started playing my guitar again. It's like, because I think, you know, I need to start doing worship more. You know, I needed to do that. That's something that was really an important part of my life. So just be open to hear from the Lord. What is he telling you to be healthy in your Christian life that you need to maybe kick to the curb? There's some things, probably habits or sins for sure, that you could say, you know, I need to stop that. I need to get rid of this. And then there's things in your life that you might go, you know, I would be better off if I start practicing this. Sometimes it's something as simple as daily devotions, right? That you decide, you know what, before I do another thing in the morning, while I'm having my coffee, I'm going to read my Bible. You know, there's lots of decisions you make in life that really will affect your spiritual life for good or for bad, that you will grow or that you grow stagnant, okay? So that's where we're going with this series, that 12 spiritual disciplines that will make your faith strong, will help you grow in Christ. And so we'll pick up on that in a little bit. I'll give you a little review where we left off. But first, I want to remind you, we are a live call-in show. It is Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. If you'd like to call in today and maybe you've got some questions about spiritual disciplines, maybe I've been really tripping you up over the whole thing that you're thinking I'm trying to tell you, you got to work for your salvation. That's not it. If you're confused about any of that, feel free to call in. You're saved by grace through faith. But step it up, folks. Let's be all we could be for the Lord. Let's invest in the kingdom. Let's do for the Lord so that we can get the most out of our life. So I'm going to have Linda now tell you how that you might partner with us in such a way that maybe whether you want to call in or whether you want to text us, there's several ways. Linda will tell you about that.
Hi, everybody. We're glad that you joined us today. So we would love to hear from you. Why don't you go ahead, give us a call. Be live on the radio with us. Be brave. You can do it. It's not that hard. They can't see you on Facebook. They only see us. So, you know, you can handle doing this, and you can even call in anonymous if you want to. Okay? The number to be live on the air with us is 208-377-3790. Again, that's 208-377-3790. If that being live on the radio just really sets you off, but you have a question or comment, you can then send a text message to Calvary Chapel Eagle's phone. Here it is. Lost baby came back last night. Boy, we have a story on that. I don't know if we want to tell you any of it, but let's just say we we're out trying to find our phone, and we finally did. But that number is 208-891-2635. If you're out there in Facebook Live land, go ahead, leave something in the comments, and when it is appropriate, we will address it. So we're dealing with generosity today. And yesterday we dealt with generosity, but we kind of hit the negative side of the what don't do. Don't do this, don't do that, don't fall for this, don't fall for that. You're not obligated to do this or that, but there is a very positive side to generosity. So hopefully we're going to hit more of that today. So where do you want to go with this, Mike?
Okay. Let me just review what we have covered so far. If you've missed any of this, you might want to go back to our Look Up page, and you could podcast any of the broadcasts. We've almost taken it one topic for a day. That's worked out pretty much that way. Now today we're going to have to cover second half of generosity, but we've covered so far the spiritual disciplines of Bible study, prayer, fasting, confession, worship, fellowship, rest, celebration, and service. And now we're looking at generosity. And like Linda says, we did cover negatives, and we don't want to be a downer for you guys. We want to make sure that we give you some positive direction today.
Hey, I've been working really hard the last couple of days, so if you missed any of those disciplines, they are up on lookuptojesus.com. I'll say it again, lookuptojesus.com, and that is our webpage. You will find everything up to date with video and audio, even up to yesterday's message, because it seems like Josh got that audio up real quick for me, so I was able to snag it and put it up today. So if you need to catch up on any of those, and we do have that testimony with Susie that we did last Thursday where the phone popped out of the holder and it ended the whole thing. So it's in two parts. It really is. You only miss a couple minutes of it. I will work on putting that into one video and even see if I can straighten out the sideways stuff. If not, you know what? It lightened up everything for us. It was a very serious testimony. The full audio is connected to both video pieces up on lookuptojesus.com. So if you just want to listen to the audio of it, but it was kind of fun for us because it took off the stress of it being such a heavy topic with all these funny things going on and losing the feed and dropping the phone and being sideways and having to flip things over. The message still got through. It was a very important testimony of God's love and forgiveness. So go back, listen to that. Listen to any of these 12 disciplines that you missed. I gave them their own little category, so you can go find those in order.
Okay.
So.
All right. Now, listen, when we talk about generosity, I was just thinking a lot of people might automatically say, well, he's a generous person, she's a generous person, he's the stingy person, and so on. Generosity, you think it's just a kind of a character trait. And it could be. There are people who are much more giving and much more stingy. But I think here there's a reason why the guy who put this together, again, I got this from churchleaders.com, and it's put out by Brandon Hilgman, 12 Spiritual Disciplines, an article I found online. But I think the reason why this is chosen, and I'm sure he did his homework on it, is because there are some things in your spiritual life where you have to choose to do it, and you have to have, what is it? I think there's even a radio program on this station called Intentional Living. You've got to intentionally make choices to live in a certain way. And generosity can be one of those things, folks. If you are a stingy person, don't be like Ebenezer Scrooge and just say, well, that's just the way I am, bah humbug. Well, listen, there's a lot of things that just the way we are, I hear people make excuses for all sort of things saying, I was born this way and that's the way I am. Well, the Lord wants you to be born again. And now he wants you to live your new life in Christ. And he wants you to live like a born again person. He wants you to, doesn't the Bible talk to us like put to death the deeds of the flesh, put off the old man, put on the new man, all this kind of stuff. That's what we're talking about when we look along the lines of spiritual discipline, because there are things in your life, such as generosity, that don't come naturally. Okay. Can I admit that? I mean, for me, I like to save up my money, and so that when I get enough, I could buy what I've been waiting to get, but how about saving up your money? Like the story I told you yesterday, I came into some money and I ran across somebody who needed that exact amount that just happened to land in my pocket, not a couple minutes earlier. And I thought, okay, Lord, I think you're trying to tell me something. We need to be open to that sort of thing. Okay. So generosity is something you choose to do. Can I say that just plainly? Choose to be a generous person. Now, we talked about yesterday, there's times when you got to close the fist rather than open the hand. There's times when you realize somebody is, if a drug addict comes to you and says, man, I need another fix. Could I have I need $20 for a fix. You don't give that drug addict, you drive them to the mission or something, right? As a matter of fact, Linda and I talked to you the other day, yesterday about pointing people to the mission. But, I have personally driven people to the rescue mission and drop them off. Of course, I've called ahead first, make sure there's a bed, and they'll always make room for somebody. I've made sure that there's a room, and then I've taken people down there because there are some people who are so, I hate to use the word messed up, but it could be an addiction, sometimes mental illness, but there are some people you should not bring into your home. And I know I've heard ministries back when I was living in California, there were ministries that were really into taking people into their home, and they would rebuke me for trying to send someone to them because why should I take them into my home? You take them into your home. It's like, wait, isn't this your ministry? And I've got little girls. I had little girls growing up, and I wasn't going to bring strangers into the home to spend the night where my little girls are in the next room. So there's common sense things here. We talked a lot about that yesterday. We talked about, knowing when not to give. Do your homework. I've always recommended that if you see somebody on the street corner often and you wonder, should I give to them? Pull over sometime, get out of your car, go over and say, hey, could I buy you lunch? Could I buy you dinner? Get to know the person, find out their story. And that will be a real eye-opener. It'll either let you know this is a person in real need and I want to do more than just buy them lunch, or it'll let you know this person is taking advantage of everybody who drives by here. Okay, so do your homework. Don't just give blindly. I know I've known godly people who have told me, you know what, that's God's business, what they do with it. It's my job to give. If they spend it on drugs, God's going to hold them accountable. I don't feel comfortable about that personally. I've only got so much money, and I want to make sure that when I give it where it's going to make the best use. I don't want to give to a drug addict to help him one more day support his habit. So we talked about all that stuff yesterday. We're going to look a little bit more about the reasons to give. And I've got a verse here, but I think Linda's got something to say right now first.
Well, I did because, we have the generosity, but the generosity starts with what you give to the Lord. And, so many people mess up or mix up, let's put it that way, giving and helping other people and their tithe that they should be giving to the church. And you don't hear us talk about that often, and we're not going to talk about it very much today. I'm going to direct you back to our website, lookuptojesus.com, if you want to know more about tithing biblically, and then love offerings and gifts above that. Go look. Look under, you'll find it under there, tithing. We did one on it, a couple months ago. I've played it once on a Monday, and got some flack on it, but that's okay. That is okay, because we don't expect everybody to agree with us. But there is the philosophy that you need to give to your church. That's very, very important. I mean, we do know some people that don't trust the church, so they don't give their tithes to the church. Even had, I've heard it get back to me that, well, we don't know where our tithes go, but I know who needs that money, so I'm going to give it to them. And they did. And they didn't think it would get back to me, but it does. The Lord always makes sure. And the thing is, that person did not realize we already knew about that person's need, and the church was helping them. sometimes when the church helps with benevolence, we don't make it public because that could be embarrassing to someone. We don't want to embarrass them. So sometimes very discreetly and quietly, the church takes care of personal needs. And our church being a very small church, we kind of keep our benevolence within the church, okay? So we don't want to embarrass anybody, but I think it was a shame because this person said they didn't know where our money was going, but they knew where it needed to go. But they didn't come ask us. They just told other people and did this little gossip, blah, 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 complain about it. And we already were. The church was taking care of the needs. There does come a part with generosity and with what the Lord tells you about tithing that you do need to give to your church. You need to support that church, or it will not be able to keep its doors open, And I'm not giving any beg for money because we don't do that. I just want to make sure the priorities are set right here. I remember one time Mike brought a guest speaker in, and the lady came up to us a couple weeks later and said, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to give my tithe money to that organization you brought in that needs it instead of to the church. Well, it kind of went over her head. She missed that she was supposed to be supporting her local church. And then love offerings and gifts go above and beyond it. And that's what should go to these other outside ministries. So with that preface set, and trusting your church, you have to trust that your church is directing the money where it's needed. I know one thing that we wanted to talk about is when you want to, say you see a natural disaster go on, and you think, oh, I want to help those poor people here, those people there, a tornado, a flood, a hurricane, earthquake, things like that happen. We don't always tell our church, we forget to. But many times we work with Samaritan's Purse is one of those things. And when you see something like that, you can go to Christian organizations. And that's such a good way to support above and beyond. But know that your church may be also supporting already in that area.
Right. It's good to ask. And that brings up a good thing that I was thinking about. I made a little note that I wanted to talk about is that it's important that you're able to trust your pastor and trust your church. I know a lot of people have been burnt from, I've heard stories of people giving large generous donations. That's a generation, large generous donations to a church for a certain cause, and it ends up getting spent on another cause. And I've heard all kinds of horror stories. Okay, but I think it's really important that you get connected to a church that you could trust the pastor, you trust the board, you trust the church government, because it really does come down to, if you don't, you're gonna hold it yourself, and you're gonna decide, I'm not gonna give, or you'll give where you think you should give. Let me tell you a little personal story that we did for a short period of time until I learned my lesson. I was on staff at a large church in California, and when I first went on staff, I started seeing the way I'm on staff, I see the inside working of things, and I started seeing the way they're spending my tithe money. And by the way, I was giving the 10%, the biblical 10% to the church, but I didn't always agree the way they would spend my tithes. And so I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my 10% away, and I'm going to keep track of it, and then I'm going to decide where that money goes. And so I did that for a time, that I would build up an account, and then I would decide. Time. Yeah, it was probably a couple months. I don't even know if it was that much. But it was a lesson learned in my early pastorate when I first went on staff, because I thought I can handle this money better than they can, and I know where it should go, rather than just letting the big church spend my money. And I found after a month or two, however long it was we did this, I realized I was wasting that money. I would spend the money on things I thought I should, and then later realize, I shouldn't have bought that, or I shouldn't have given that. And so I found out, you know what? I could waste my money just as good as my church can. You could criticize any church on how the way they spend your tithes. But you know what? I think the Bible is very biblical. The Bible's biblical. It's a very biblical rule to give to the storehouse to where you're receiving from. You're a member of a church, you're being blessed, you're being ministered to by that church, then give to that church and trust that they're going to spend that money properly. Now, if you see extreme abuses, that's a whole nother story. Maybe you need to confront the pastor or the board or leave the church, whatever. There are things where you feel like, every now and then we'll see something that's an extreme abuse. And by the way, there's times churches might make a bad decision every now and then. It doesn't mean they're always wasting your money. There's times, and believe me, now that we're pastoring our own church, I'm pastoring for 8 years now, and I'm the director of the board. We have a board, but I'm head of the board, and we make decisions who to help with benevolence and where to give our money, and when there's a natural disaster, where to send money to through Samaritan's Purse or a pro-life ministry nearby. There's always places to send your money. Every now and then we might, I can't actually think of a time where I thought, oh, that was a mistake, but it's easy to do. You could make a mistake and you could say, maybe we shouldn't have given that much, or maybe we shouldn't have given there.
I can think of one, but we did not find out that the people and the need were not being honest until years later. So
okay.
I don't want to say any more than that.
I got you.
And luckily it was only a one-time donation that we made, and I think the Lord protected us. But even with that, we weren't the only church that got taken on that one.
There was a nationwide drive to help somebody with something, and we found out later how the money was being spent. But you'd think it's good because all these churches are banding together to give money to this thing, and you may think, this got to be good. And it's do the best you can to research it. There's all kinds of places that want you to give your money. Okay. So anyway, the tithe story was, I learned that it was better for me just to trust the Lord, and as an act of worship, to simply give my 10%. And it's funny, you talk about tithing. Is it biblical? Is it 10%? What is it? There's all kinds of stories to that. Let me just say, for me personally, we started giving, when we were young Christians, we just gave what we felt we could give. And then we started growing to the point where we thought, let's give 10% of our net to the Lord. And then as we grew a little bit more mature, we start giving 10% of our gross. Now we give more than 10%. But it's a faith walk. It really is, where you think, how much should I give to the church? And I think it's an act of worship. Okay. We're talking about generosity today, but we're talking first. Let's say we got sidetracked into this whole thing about tithing. I believe that your tithes and offerings you're giving to your church, you should be able to, first of all, trust your church, or don't attend there. But it's an act of worship. You really know where someone's heart is when you find out where they put their money. And to me, when I write a check for our church, I'm worshiping the Lord. It's an act of worship. But one more thing before we move on to this topic is I had to repent. I realized I was putting my money away, and I was spending it how I thought it should be spent, and I found out that I could just as easily waste my money and make bad decisions. Like I've known people. Anyway, I don't want to tell too many detailed stories. But, one particular example is I bought a commentary series that I thought was something I really needed. And I never used the commentary series because, it was my tithe money. I thought, the senior pastor gets to use the church money to buy his commentary, so I should be able to do that too. Lesson learned. You know what? I bought a commentary series just because I could, and I had the money put away, and I never used it. Well, I had to really repent, okay? So
we're
go before the Lord. Yeah, I mean, this was
very
like 35 years ago,
yeah.
Okay? But I'm just saying, go before the Lord and just lay your life down before Him. He belongs to you. As a matter of fact, that's the first point I want to make here. In this article in churchleaders.com, they say the reason we should be generous is that nothing we own really belongs to us. Now, I want to change that a little bit. I do believe when you own something, it belongs to you. But I think more than that, you belong to the Lord. So things may belong to you, but you belong to the Lord. And so what you do with the stuff that belongs to you, you're accountable to God for. How about that? I want to put a little preface on it. And the scripture that is quoted with it, and I think it's a good one. Let's take time to look at it. It's 1 Corinthians 6:19. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own, for you were bought at a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit. And so with that concept, we need to start there. If we're talking about generosity or any of the spiritual disciplines, we start with, whose life is this anyway? Is it just my life to do with what I want? Or is this life God's life? Is my life God's? Did he buy me? Did he purchase me with the blood of Jesus? Do I belong to him? Then think like that, act like that, live like that. And so when we talk about generosity, that's the place to start. I like where this article takes you with that, is that you were bought with a great price. You belong to the Lord. So can you say, this is mine, I worked hard for it, and it's my car, or it's my house, or my whatever? Yeah, you can. But you, in a higher level, you belong to the Lord. And God can say about you, this is my person. I purchased him or her on the cross with my blood, and he is mine, she is mine. And so whatever you own, because I think it's kind of funny when you think, this is not my TV, it's God's TV. Well, God doesn't want to watch that TV. It's you who's going to watch it, okay? So you just better be careful what you watch on it, because you belong to the Lord. So that's the way I look at it. Okay, let's continue reading the article here. I see we're almost coming up on the halfway mark here. Everything we have belongs to God, and we're just managing God's resources. The scripture quoted here is Psalm 24:1, that says, the earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein, for he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. So in reality, yes, everything belongs to the Lord. The earth is the Lord's, and he's given you some things to be responsible over. Your paycheck, the money in your pocket, the credit cards you carry around, your children. That's one of the things we'd always talk about when we're raising our kids. These kids are our kids because they're our responsibility. But in reality, they're the Lord's kids, and then we need to treat them as the Lord's kids, protect them from harm, protect them from abuse, train them in the right way. And so really they're the Lord's kids, but they are our responsibility to raise. In the same way, the money you own, the property that you have, the possessions that you have, they are maybe your property, your possessions, your money, but it is your responsibility what you do with what you have, because you belong to the Lord, as 1 Corinthians 6:19 says. Now, let's continue in the article. Jesus taught about money and possessions a lot. He warned, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. That's Luke 12:15. And so one of the things when we're talking about the topic of generosity is, why won't you give? Why won't you be generous? Sometimes it's because we are greedy and we're stingy and we're covetous and we see something and we want it. We always see things that we want. And so we don't dare open up. Remember, I told you the concept of living with a closed fist or an open hand. Keep an open hand that you could give, that you're willing to give. By the way, an open hand can also receive, okay? But when you close your fist, that's almost a fighting stance. You don't want to resist the generosity that the Lord wants to do in your life. Okay, let's keep reading here. Instead, we should store our treasures in heaven, because our hearts follow our treasures. Now, there's a verse quoted here. I think maybe we should look at it and see how much time we have. It's Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, where Jesus said, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But, and I won't finish it until after the station break, okay? So let's finish this up. We'll be back in about 60 seconds.
Listening to 94.1 The Voice, KBXL, Caldwell, Boise. Radio you can believe in. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Look Up airs every Monday through Friday afternoon from 2:30 to 3:30. Through Facebook Live, text, and phone, You can ask questions on what the Bible has to say about the real things that are going on in your life. If you would like to text the Sassos, the number is 208-891-2635. The best way to have your question answered is to call the Sassos in the studio right now. That number is 208-377-3790. To learn more about Calvary Chapel Eagle, visit calvarychapeleagle.com. Now, here's Mike and Linda.
All right, let's start over with that verse so we get it all in context here. This is Jesus speaking to an audience of hungry hearts wanting to learn the truths of God. And Jesus is talking about how you live your lives, how you spend your money, what you invest in, what you don't invest in. And he says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. I'm reading from Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. Now, I guess we should break that down and say, does that mean you should not have a savings account? Does that mean you shouldn't have any possessions? I think Jesus is actually rebuking those who that's all they think about, or that's where their treasure is. Matter of fact, that's the key word, treasures. What are your treasures? Okay, because if your bank account is just a savings account for retirement, or a savings account because you're going to use it for the Lord, or whatever it is, okay, if it's your savings account and that's all there is, that's one thing. If it's your treasure, I think that's why Jesus used this word. Listen, do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. Because I tell you what, your treasures can be stolen. Your money can be stolen too. Your possessions can be stolen too. But if those are not your treasures, then your treasures could never be stolen, because all they could take from you is your money, and that's all they get. You know what I mean? Keep reading. Okay. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be. I think the real key word here is treasure, because the Lord is trying to warn us about treasuring the wrong things. Let me pull this up in the Greek here, and let's just see treasure. It's precious things, the precious things in our life, a treasury. I guess the problem
it's what holds your heart.
Yeah.
It's what holds your heart. Is it Jesus, or is it your things?
Yeah, I think quite often, and there's the danger of looking things up in the Greek and Hebrew, is it won't always solve all your, answer all your questions, because listening to the context of any text and getting the heart of what Jesus is saying, getting the heart of the matter, you will come to the right conclusion. Because before I even looked up the word treasure, it started jumping off the page at me. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. And then the next verse says, lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. Where is your heart? What do you value? As a matter of fact, like Linda said, the last verse here says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What is it that you treasure most in life? What is your treasure? And so that's really the thing that we're warned about by Jesus, and we're exhorted all throughout the Scripture of laying up our treasures in the eternal. Okay. So anyway, live with an open hand. Let's keep reading here. Where did we leave off? Instead, I read that. If we're not careful, the cares of this world and riches will creep into our lives and keep us from God. So Jesus asks, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? In Matthew 16:26. Put simply, you cannot serve God and mammon. Now, there's a bunch of verses coming to me, but I'm going to wait and keep reading. I think that they may be coming up in the next paragraph here, because I know we're warned over and over again in the epistles, and not just the Gospels, about just being caught up in possessions and materialism. And that's the wrestle that takes place. That's the battle that takes place. Should I be generous? Should I save for me? And it becomes a real battle in your mind. Here we go. We keep reading. The problem is not riches. It's our attitude towards money. There we go.
There's the key.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
It's the attitude you take.
Right. We need to learn to be content no matter how much money we have. Actually, there's a verse there in 1 Timothy 6:6. It says, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." Let me read more into this. He says, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content." This is really the verse I was thinking about going to. So let's read further on, because Paul is writing to Timothy, as long as you got a roof over your head and you eat each day, you got a place to lay your head down at night, that's what you worry about, rather than all the extras that people want. He says, having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But then in verse 9, I'm reading from 1 Timothy 6, "Those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." Boy, there is a whole lot being said here. And really, that's the battle. That's the tug of war that we're trying to describe here between, do I be generous and give, or do I close my fist and hold on to what I got and I'm just going to spend on me? I'm telling you something. When Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive, I've gotten some nice things in life, and I do have some nice things, and I enjoy life. Don't get me wrong. But I'll tell you something, some of my greatest blessings have been when I've been able to help somebody else. Like Linda was saying, there's been people in the church who couldn't pay the rent or needed money for Christmas gifts for the kids because they were poor, and we were able to help with that. And it's so rewarding. It's such it's more blessed. It's more blessed to give in that way than to just get your new toy that you're looking at. Okay. So he says, "Those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, a snare, and a many foolish, harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." I think what's being described here is that this stops you. It clogs up the flow of God's grace of giving and generosity and love. If all you love is yourself, then all you give to is yourself. If you don't love other people, you won't give to other people. If you don't give to other people and you just give to yourself, you make a pretty small package, folks. And it's just really it's a sad situation, because what Paul is warning Timothy about is that if your lack of generosity comes from selfish ambition, where you want to be rich someday, so you can't bear to give all this away. You gotta be rich. And believe me, I know some people would say, "I don't want to be rich. I just want to pay the bills." You know what? There's so much to say about that. I've known people in all kinds of states of prosperity or poverty. And for the most part, everybody can afford to get what they want to get. You will make a sacrifice. When people want something, I have found people can't afford something, but they want it, they get it. I can find people complain all the time about what they don't have and what they don't make and the money they don't have. But when they see something they want, they find a way to get it. And that seems to be the way of life. But if your motivation here is that you just want to get rich, and so you can't give to anybody else, I'm telling you something. Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. And so be open that if the Lord shows you there's somebody he wants you to bless because they can't pay the bills or they can't feed their family, that's a whole nother thing compared to a nicety that you want. I've told you stories yesterday. I'm not going to go repeat the stories. Make sure that the needs of others are being thought of rather than just the greeds of you. Okay, let's keep reading here. Verse 10 of 1 Timothy 6. Paul says to Timothy, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness." You hear that? That the love of money could get to the point where people even leave the faith because money becomes their god. They've strayed from the faith in their greediness, and they've pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Now, I've heard people quote this verse out of context and say money is the root of all evil. That's not true, because you can't live without money. You can't pay your bills without money. There's a lot of good things you could do with money. Okay. Money is not the root of all evil. The Bible says here in 1 Timothy 6:10, the love of money is a root to all kinds of evil. So you get that right. That means There's all different directions you could go with this, folks.
Yeah.
There's all different ways to waste your life or to be stingy and to hoard what you got because you love money. And by the way, you don't have to be rich to love money. Poor people could do this too. It's a condition of the heart. And I've known rich people who are very generous. I've known rich people who are always giving and they never run out because the Lord keeps blessing them and filling their pocket, right? And I've known poor people who love money, but they're just holding on to it all the time. You know what? Your stinginess doesn't really affect how much you get. There is one who gives and receives even more back. What is it, that old saying, you can't give out, you can't outgive God? I'm sure you've heard it before. The whole concept that if you're a giver and if you're generous, the Lord's going to bless you. As a matter of fact, we're going to look at some scriptures at the end of our program today that I was trying to find in Proverbs, and I found them that I think are worth looking at. Matter of fact, let me just look at one of them now, and I'll come back here. Proverbs 28:27 says that he who gives to the poor will not lack, but he who hides his eye will have many curses. And so there's time, God's actually saying, if you're willing to give to the poor. Now remember, we talked yesterday, the whole show, about knowing who not to give to. There are poor people because there are some people who are poor because they brought it on themselves with stupid decisions, and they continue to spend their money improperly, and they continue to use their money wrong. Don't give them more, okay? But listen to this, Proverbs 19:17. I love this verse. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has been given, or what he has given. I love it because the concept is if you see somebody who's truly poor, that because things have happened to them that are out of their control, it's not that they're keep spending their money on drugs. I'm talking somebody who's truly poor, and you give to them and help them. God says, I owe you. Isn't that something I can just hear some of you out there saying, well, why doesn't God just give to them? Because his plan.
He uses you.
Yeah, his plan is to use you. It's like that song, Do Something. We played it a while back on the radio station, but now because of copyright laws, I can't play it with Facebook running here. But it's this man who looks at all the problems of the world and says, God, why don't you do something? There's a problem over here. Why don't you do something? And the whole song is called Do Something. And at the end of the song, the way it lays out is it says, why don't you raise somebody up to do something about that? And God says, yeah, I have. It's you. Do something. And anyway, I probably just ruined the whole song here.
I created you.
But it's, yeah, that's right. I did. I created you. That's the punch of the song. I love that song because in reality, God wants to do some of his greatest works through you and I. He really does. We think, if God really cares, why doesn't he do something about this? Or why doesn't he give to the poor? Or how come he lets them be poor? I think it's God's plan that we minister to one another. He wants you to be his hands and feet. He wants you to be his mouthpiece. He wants to use you to bless others.
You know, we do that. We bless others. We're generous. It doesn't just bless them. It blesses the giver. Sometimes there's no greater blessing and joy than to help someone that really genuinely needs it. So I think that's one reason the Lord just doesn't put money in the mouth of the fish like he did, for Peter to go pay taxes. He uses people because when you do what God asks you to, you get blessed by doing it. You grow by doing it. You learn to trust the Lord more when you do that because you see how faithful God is, that you can't outgive him. When you give, the Lord always seems to take care of your needs. There's just been times we've had to step out in faith, especially when Mike first went into ministry, and the money did not meet the bills. Okay? That's all there was to it.
The paycheck didn't.
The paycheck didn't meet the bills. But everything was paid. And I don't remember people giving us anything. Somebody may have brought over a bag of food once. But it's like the Lord just covered it. He can multiply things. I don't know how it worked out, but it did work out. And we learned such a great lesson. Instead of be greedy and hold on to everything, God takes care of us. Doesn't mean he gives us everything that we want, but he does give us what we need.
Yeah. I'm looking at another reference here that...
Take that camera away.
Every time Linda stops talking, she waves her hand at me like, turn the camera on. I don't want to look at me. Well, relax, okay. Paul wrote to Timothy in chapter 6 also about giving. This verse really means a lot to me because it actually says it's not a sin to be rich. I used to think when I first got saved, I thought we're supposed to give everything away and be poor. I remember the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. That was my model. I just thought, I want to be like St. Francis of Assisi and give up all my belongings and I don't own anything. I mean, that was my concept as a new Christian.
The Jesus movement, there was the commune thing going on.
Yeah. Well, when I read this, it really kind of changed my thinking, and it actually took a load off my chest. In 1 Timothy 6:17, Paul wrote to Timothy, "Command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in the uncertain riches, but in the living God who gives us richly all things to enjoy." Now, there's more, but he doesn't say command those who are rich in this world to give away all their money and to not be rich. There's times God has raised up rich people who are his, who use their money for good things. So don't get me wrong. When we're talking about generosity and the love of money being a root of all sorts of evil, and we're talking about all this stuff, there are many good, godly people who are wealthy, and that's a relative term. What does wealthy mean? But Paul says, just command those people who are wealthy, Christians who are wealthy. Don't be haughty. Don't trust in the uncertainty of riches, but in the living God. See, the problem is when you're rich, you tend to trust in your money because I got the money. Something happens, I could bail myself out. I could pay the bills. Paul says, make sure that you're trusting in the right thing. Trust in the Lord who gives us richly all things to enjoy. There's another line there. Listen, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Could I take a little bit of guilt trip off of you right now? The Bible doesn't say that if you're a Christian, you shouldn't own anything and you're a sinner if you have possessions or if you have some toys or if you have some niceties. Because 1 Timothy 6:17, look it up and read it carefully. He says that God gives us richly all things to enjoy. If you could afford some nice things, I mean, you're not living outside your means, but you could afford some nice things, enjoy your life. But then he also says in verse 18, but let them do good, that they may be rich in good works and ready to give and willing to share. There's the balance there, folks, that it's not a sin to be rich. But Paul writes to Timothy, because maybe there were some rich people in Timothy's church and Paul knew about it. And he says, look, nothing wrong with that. Just keep your eyes on the Lord. Make sure that you realize where your security really is. It's in your God, not in your money. And he says, tell those people to do good, live a good life and be rich in good works. How about that? You're rich in money, I'll be rich in good works. And be ready to give and willing to share. He doesn't say, give all your money away and be poor. Okay? Interesting. God's perspective here. One more verse and we're going to go back to the article. Storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come that they may lay hold of eternal life. The perspective is here, there is an eternity and we need to live with the eternal perspective. We need to live in such a way that when we look back on our life, we don't have regrets and say, oh, I lived it all just for me. I spent it all just on me. I was stingy, I was closed-fisted, and I just lived for me, for my own pleasure. You want to stand before God someday and hear the Lord say, well done, good and faithful servant, rather than, that you did it all for you, okay? That Frank Sinatra song, I did it my way, that's really not God's way, okay? So be rich in good works. Now, also says, plus giving must be done with the right attitude because God loves a cheerful giver. And that verse is from 2 Corinthians 9:7, where Paul writes to the Corinthians, so let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And what that means is, Yes, God wants you to be a giver, but he wants you to be a cheerful giver. He doesn't want you to go, okay, it's in the Bible, I'm supposed to give. Okay, it's in the Bible, I'm supposed to be generous. No, God loves a cheerful giver. Now listen, let me read one more verse here for context, because I love verse 8 of 2 Corinthians 9. He says, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, always having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. You know, basically what Paul's saying is, live with an open hand, be a cheerful giver. You're not going to run out of money. I don't know if there's anybody who was so generous that now they're poor because they were so generous. God will take care of you. Remember the verse we looked at earlier? He who gives to the poor lends to the Lord. It's a real important concept here to keep in mind. A couple more things, and then we're going to wrap up this topic here. The last paragraph in this article says, while most Americans today spend more than they make, those who practice generosity must discipline themselves to live with less. This frees more of our time, money, and possessions to give back to God. And, I think that's always been my philosophy, even in our family, but also in our church. There's been a lot of people who would come to us and tell us that we should spend the church money by buying this property or buying that. We really can't afford the property in the first place. I know I've heard people on the radio, and they'd write to me and say, man up, go buy some property. Well, you know what? We don't even qualify. We can't go and buy property because they don't accept an IOU written on a piece of paper. You need to come up with some cash, and we don't even qualify for it. But even if we did, my philosophy is I'm not going to spend God's money any more risky than I would spend my money. I like this article saying that the problem with Americans today is they spend more than they make. I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to do that with God's money. We manage the church budget properly in such a way that we're not going to put the church over a barrel and buy a property, which I've told you we don't qualify for. But if we could, I wouldn't unless I saw that we actually could make the payments. How many times have you heard of a church that buys a property or buys a building, does something financially, and now they've got to have a big fundraiser, and they've got to get people in their church to pledge because we've got to pay for this. We just took out a loan. We just bought some property. We just bought a building. Everybody's got to give, and they got the big thermometer up in front of the church. Here's our goal. We got to raise up the money more and more and more. I think that's sin. I think it's wrong. I think it's flesh and it's hype, and that you should only spend what you got. Don't spend what you don't got. Don't put God's people into debt, and don't put the church into debt, and don't spend your own money that way. Okay. So anyway, that's, now you know my opinion of that. So let's see. There's a couple of the Proverbs, that I don't know which ones we read. Let's look over them again. Proverbs 22:9. He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives his bread to the poor. By the way, you notice it says he gives his bread to the poor. I think it's important that if you know somebody who's hurting, you make sure that they don't go without food. Okay. It doesn't mean you pay for their Lexus. I think that there's a misconception in America today where somebody has overextended themselves, and then they come to the church and they want you to help pay their bills, but they bought something they couldn't afford, and they bought something they shouldn't have. And you know what I've always said to friends that have come to me like that, I've said, I'll make sure that you never go hungry. You know what? I will make sure that you have food, but I'm not going to make sure that you get to drive that great big giant car that you can't afford. Okay, that's the thing. A couple more verses here we could look at before we wrap it up. I think we did look at Proverbs 19:17. This is the one I really like. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. If you have an open hand and are generous and give to the poor, the Lord will reward you. He's actually saying to you, if you give to the truly poor and make sure that they don't go without food, I owe you. That's the way God works. I've got one more verse here. Let's see what it says in Matthew 19:21. Oh, this is interesting. This is Jesus dealing with the rich young ruler. When Jesus was dealing with the rich young ruler, the ruler came up and says, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus told him the typical, don't murder, don't commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and mother, and you'll love your neighbors yourself. And then this rich young ruler said, all these I've kept from my youth. What do I still lack? Now, maybe he would have been better off not asking that last question, but the Lord answered it. He says, if you want to be perfect, go sell what you have, give to the poor, and then you will have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. Now, when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Now, I think it's interesting that just like the verse we read in Timothy earlier, the Bible doesn't tell everybody who's rich to get rid of their money. But Jesus told this particular rich young ruler to get rid of his money. And I could only assume it's because Jesus looked into his heart and saw that money was his treasure. That was his God. Or it could be that Jesus was giving him an opportunity to step up to a higher form of living, because he didn't say, if you want to go to heaven, go and sell what you have. He says, if you want to be perfect, if you want to be complete, if you really want to do it the best way. It could be that Jesus was actually telling him, you know what, young man, you want to step up? Sell what you have, give it to the poor, come follow me, because I've got an adventure for you. And I think God gives us choices like that in our lives. There's times where we could keep what we got and play it safe and hold on to our possessions and hold on to our money, hold on to our job, play it safe. Or there's times we could take a step and say, you know what? I want more. I want to be perfect before God. I want to give him everything I have. And you could give it all and go follow Jesus. And, that's back in my early days, I actually came really close to joining a commune, because that's the way I looked at it. I wanted to join a commune. Listen, I hear the music, time's up, but let me give you a verse to look up. Proverbs 3:9, talking about giving your first fruits, talking about tithing. Proverbs 3:9. You can look that up on your own, because we're out of time. We'll start a new topic.
p.m. and on Sundays at 8 a.m. for his radio show, It's All About Jesus. If we ran out of time and you didn't get a chance to call in, you can send your questions to look up at CCE.